Hello everyone and welcome to Drive States. So today we're going to use a micro lecture component where we're going to go over the main topics to help you supplement your reading. So hopefully this will be a nice bite-sized bit to help you understand drive states a bit. We're going to talk about the key properties of drive states, biological goals, examples of drive states, and the main moderators and determinants of drive states. So one thing I want to ask you before we begin is, what is the longest time you've gone without eating? I know that's random, but hunger is a huge drive. How did you feel? What did you think about? And how did it feel when you finally ate? I know for me, I'm hungry right now, so it's all I'm thinking about. It's consuming my thoughts. I don't really want to do anything else. That may happen with drive states because they are effective experiences that motivate organisms like ourselves to fulfill goals that are generally beneficial to our survival and reproduction. They are physiological cues that push us to behave in a certain way. So when we're hungry, it is because our body is in need of a resource, and we are going to try to act accordingly. Another example of a drive state, we're going to talk about three, so hunger, thirst, and sex. Sometimes sex is debatable as a drive state, just because of the nature of it. Like, is it a necessity? No, not like hunger and thirst, but it's still a part of our animalistic experience, I guess. It's up for debate, but I do have a video included in this PowerPoint that talks about sex as a motivating force, if you will. But with drive states, they have key properties, and these are going to be generating behaviors that result in benefits for the body. So unlike purely affective states or our emotions, we are also pushing to satisfy a need. You're thirsty, you have to get some water or something. You're hungry, you gotta get food. They're going to vary in triggers, or what's going to spark them. We have internal that come from within us and external that are in our environment. So remember that difference. We also have different drive states that result in different cognitive and emotional states. We see you at different sex drive states. It can vary from men and women if we're going to stick to that dichotomy. Homeostasis is very important. Drive states help us maintain our body's homeostasis, or our kind of set points, where our body needs to be working regularly, right? If you don't have enough of a resource, your body's going to push you to get more of that resource. A narrowing of attention. So think about when you're really hungry or hangry, hungry, angry, right? That experience is going to, you don't want to think about anything else but getting that food, because you're now hungry. You need to get something, and you can't think about things way in the future because that hunger is distracting you so much in the now. These are key properties of drive states. And while they don't control us entirely, we can't say we're a victim to our drive states, right? They do have a pretty powerful pull over our behavior and our thinking. And so it's just our body trying to maintain that stability across our different physiological symptoms. If you need more calories, you're probably going to be hungry. Think of a set point. When we talk about our body as a set point, this set point theory is kind of, last time I checked, it's kind of debatable with our bodies in terms of a set point, like with weight. People think there's a set point with weight, but it's not. I don't think that's supported. Anyway, think of an air conditioning or a heating unit in your house, and you have it perpetually set to 72 degrees. You want it 72 degrees in your house at all times. If it gets too hot, your air conditioning is going to turn on to cool it down. If it gets too cold, your heat's going to turn on to get it back up to 72. That's a set point that your house is functioning at in terms of its temperature. Our bodies kind of do the same thing. Okay? And so when we do this, they are automatic and unconscious. We're not telling our body to activate this response. It just kind of happens. And unfortunately, it has some effects that may deter us in other realms, like narrowing our attention, taking away from one thing and putting it toward another. So, for example, as drive states intensify, they direct our attention towards, well, basically anything that sates that biological need in question. So outcomes and objectives not related to sating that need are going to lose value. You may have wanted to see a movie previously, but you're so hungry that you'd much rather go out to eat at a restaurant, that the stuff not related to food it may not hold value. Secondly, a collapsing of time perspective toward the present. It's harder for us to see things in the future when we're thinking about our present needs. And third, thoughts and outcomes related to the self versus others. Altruism is the idea that we can do good for others without expecting any reward. Well, when we are in higher drive states, it tends to undermine our altruism and lead to to higher levels of selfishness. We tend to focus on the self to sate that biological need. Again, we're not victims of this need. We can control ourselves and our emotions to get what we want, but it can direct us a little bit. There's even questions and concerns about sex drive, but Ariely and Lowenstein introduced an interesting study in 2006. Now, granted, the sample wasn't very big, but it talked about the heat of the moment and how the anticipation of sexual encounters or the absence of sexual activity can affect someone's seemingly drive state. So it analyzed men who were both aroused and non-aroused. They did this in the privacy of their home and asked them questions in both a non-aroused and aroused state to see if there was a difference in how they answered the questions based on their sexual arousal. So it was really quite interesting. So take a look at those figures when you get the chance. I linked the article previously so you can read it. But two illustrative drive states we want to talk about are hunger and thirst. These are your big ones. Because when you're hungry or thirsty, your body's missing something that it severely needs. Your hypothalamus is responsible for managing those homeostatic processes and secreting the hormones that are going to trigger you to eat. And so your lateral hypothalamus is going to be activated when you're hungry, right? And your ventromedial hypothalamus is going to be activated when you're full. So basically, your body, your stomach's going to send signals to your brain that says, hey, I'm hungry. Now that's oversimplified. And the lateral hypothalamus is like, got it, right? And you're going to be motivated to eat. But you should eat slowly because it takes about 20 minutes for your body to send out those hormones and signals to your brain saying, hey, I'm full, stop eating. My brain apparently doesn't work like that. But then you have your sensory cortices that are also going to play a role in helping you identify food items, right? Your smell, your sound. You hear that microwave dinging. What are you making, parental unit? I'm quite hungry. So those sensations are also going to help in triggering that hunger. And these are more external things, those sensations. But the internal has to do with what resides inside of you. Now, sexual arousal, like I said, it's debatable whether it's truly a drive state, because while it's a physiological want, is it a need is still kind of debated. So I would use that term with a grain of salt. But it is critical for reproduction, and we do see maybe a change in cognitions and behaviors with an absence of sexual activity or immediate presence and possibility of sexual activity. And this varies based on, men and women, respectively. I included this wonderful, informative video with Hank Green concerning sex and how it motivates the body and the physiological responses and why it's such a great motivator for some people. So check it out. I will say, warning, that if you watch this on your own, there are some noises that may seem inappropriate if taken out of context. So I would just be wary of your surroundings as you're watching this. It's not inappropriate, it's informative, but it does show you hear a 2-second clip of some sexual type noises. But it's very informative, so I would check it out. And the reason why we look at the sexual response cycle, why sex and arousal is so important, is because there's such strong physiological reactions during the sexual response cycle. Kinsey was the first person, in 1948, at a very taboo time, to measure sexual reports of behaviors in human male and females, and he was the one who established more of a spectrum concerning sexuality and was looking at, hey, what do people do in terms of their sex lives? And it spurred so much research that he has a whole institution still at Indiana University, and they still do a breadth of research concerning sexuality, branching into gender studies. Masters and Johnson, in 1966, were able to kind of piggyback off of this by looking at physiological responses during sexual behavior to see how the body reacts physically. So kind of pairing these two, we can see how they complement one another or join to create such a motivating force. But it's kind of hard to research some things like sex drive because there's a lot of shame surrounding masturbation and engaging in sexual acts. And people talk about this as related to sexual orientation, which is important to note that people who are like homosexual are not hypersexual. But it's just that it's not chosen nor changed. There's no clear environmental factors to influence sexual orientation. And it's not related to mental health. You know, it's not a mental health disorder. It's a natural variant. And that's where the APA stands on this measure. Homosexuality and heterosexuality and everything in between is not related to mental health and not chosen or changed. If homosexuality is related to mental health, it's usually because of the stigma that is faced by people of those orientations within their groups. So what's going to cause mental health issues is not accepting family members and our societies, things of that nature. But I'm getting a little tangential. But research is going to focus on sex and arousal, why there's such a strong physiological response to that act, and how it could possibly drive us or motivate us. And this is just another interesting facet because we have morality that also plays a role in how we assess it. So drive states are evolved emotional mechanisms. So self-beneficial actions are going to take precedence. Many drive states, fear, thirst, even exhaustion. I know exhaustion is a big one for me. Maternal drives, and sometimes even drug cravings if your body's addicted to a different substance. These are going to vary based on internal and external drives. So whether something's coming from a cue from within or something in your environment that's associated with that different drive. There are real-world consequences for drive states. So all this to say that it's not an excuse to do it whatever you wish. But that it may be an influencing factor. And a mismatch between drive states and the ability to fulfill them quickly may lead to some issues with people not understanding appropriate avenues for sating those drive states. Stay tuned. I guess go view part 2 of this week's lecture and let me know if you have any questions.